Welcome to the Small Business Surgeon Podcast, the show where we dissect the businesses of top producers, examine their growth strategies, and share with you the bare bones of their success. I am your host, Samuel Smith, and I'm glad you're here. Let's operate. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to this week's episode of the Small Business Surgeon Podcast. Guys, I am so glad you are here today to meet today's guest. She is the founder of Dapper Codes, a full-service agency specializing in transforming businesses through a proprietary triangulation method, which I am very eager to hear about. Please welcome to the show, Kelly Gordon. Kelly, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I know we had a great chat before and kind of led us here, so I'm excited to extend that.
Yeah, man, it's so rare that I meet somebody that shares such passion for the things that we do, and you're very, very passionate and incredibly experienced in what you do. I'd love to hear about your story because, you know, when I checked out your LinkedIn and all your social profiles preparing for the show, I noticed that you have been consistent in your work since 2007. Now that's what, 17 years. In the same line of work. You don't see that. You've got some amazing tenacity and staying power. So before we get into the nitty-gritty of what you do, you know, tell me a little bit about how you came up and how in 2007 you ended up starting your own agency.
Absolutely. So my story's a little bit different. I did go to school for web design and development. So that's my background.
Mhm.
And kind of got into the market and was an intern at one of the local kind of large shops here at the time and got my feet wet, that kind of thing. They actually offered me a position at $12 an hour.
Oh, wow.
And I respectfully declined at that point and learned very quickly that I took care of my parents for a while, and like there's a lot of financial things, and you know it was one of those things where I've got to make more money than I'm making, right?
Right,
So
right.
really stepping into that and saying, hey, this is where I am and this is what I've got to do. And it was a rough go for a while. I'm not even gonna lie, I probably wouldn't suggest a lot of people to do what I did with no money to my name at the time, but jumped in, learned it, and quickly shifted to marketing. You know, the timeline, you guys know that's kind of before Facebook ads really was a thing, and like coming from
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
and that
yeah.
was, I think,
Wow. I've forgotten about 2006, 7 when Facebook didn't exist and there was no Facebook ad traffic. And it was all like, because, you know, I got my start direct linking in 2008, direct linking Facebook traffic as fast as we could buy it. We were direct linking to dating sites. Tell me about how you started. What was the first projects you kind of worked on and got your teeth stuck into back then? Because I don't think people realize just how different the entire landscape of the internet was.
oh my gosh, it's almost non-comparable at this point.
Agreed. Yeah.
Of what we knew then versus what we knew now, but really what could be done, right?
Yeah.
So it really was rooted in, you know, still what we consider kind of core pieces, which is web design development and SEO,
Hmm.
right? The I don't even think Google business profiles existed back then.
No, not back
At
then.
that
No.
point, right? So it was still like that's how long ago. I'm dating myself. Sorry,
It's
dating you
okay.
guys.
No, like look, it's our job to pass this knowledge forward. Like, you know, we've earned it. Yeah. So
Right.
please date yourself. Like I for one love listening to stories from back in the day when we were all just kind of figuring out what the internet was and what we could do with it. I mean, this was pre-smartphones even, you know.
Absolutely. You
I had a
know,
phone with a keyboard that slid out. It was a
oh, the
Microsoft
cool one.
phone.
Yeah, I remember my
Yeah, it
friend got
slid
one of
that.
those. She's like, I
Yeah.
want one of them.
Yeah, you're coolest kid on the block if you had that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to even describe how different the landscape was, you
Hmm.
know, but I think really I'm grateful that I came up at that point. I think it really, really rooted understanding the fundamentals
Hmm.
because we have so many bells and whistles now, which is a whole conversation that we can
Oh,
have. I think it
yeah,
allows
yeah.
us almost an easier path to stray from the real core of what actually makes business tick. And I think that having come up earlier on and still being in it for this long, it allows, you know, me, I'm sure you too, to root ourselves in a slightly different place, which for me has allowed deeper relationships and honestly longer lifetime value with our clients.
Dude, thank you for giving me a perspective just then that never dawned on me. You know, like we know what we know because we started out when all that was available was the fundamentals. Like that's all you could do. And man, yeah, the number of people that jump from one magic tool to the next magic tool to the next magic tool, and they forget it's really just a case of understanding your audience and solving that problem in front of them. Like,
Absolutely.
so,
And that, I mean, kind of leads me to, gosh, it's been 17 years. That's crazy. Leads me
mhm,
to, kind of what you said before, that triangulation, but what we'll kind of get into that. The piece, the core here, guys, everything is a bell and whistle and a tool. But one thing that isn't is your core message. And literally everyone gets it wrong.
yeah.
Literally. Right.
Oh my
So
goodness, yes.
if we can, what happens is we use all of these bells and whistles throughout various stages of the funnel. We didn't understand that back then, right? Like all we knew was, can I say something to somebody and get them to respond? That's
Hmm.
it. These days we call that middle of funnel, right? The problem is most people try to use too many bells and whistles at that middle of funnel without recognizing, is the core message working?
Right.
Bells and whistles should enhance, right? Not create that initial interest. And so I think, and we can have, I'm sure, pretty interesting conversations around that, but I think that that has been lost.
I could see that. I mean, yeah, you make a very good point, and like it's so easy to lose a customer in the middle of the funnel. I think people overlook that, like the amount of effort. Oh my goodness, the amount of effort people spend to get them to a site, and then they lose them instantly. They got a bounce rate that's just seconds, and you're like, well, this really, it's quite confusing for the poor fella,
Mhm.
man. But like I want to hear a little bit more about the history of Kelly and coming up, some of the things that you overcame in those first couple of years. Because we get a lot of guys that are in that, yeah, first 2 to 3 years of business, the first critical bits, and they're figuring out how to stack the pieces together that they need. So, what was it like starting out for you? And what were those some of those challenges you alluded to with a slight smile a little bit earlier in the conversation?
It was rough. I knew how to. I mean, back then, gosh, this is still dating me, but we would design sites in like Photoshop, right?
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
we would slice them and put them in like
Yeah.
Joomla. This is still even pre WordPress, really,
Hmm.
right? That didn't come on until a little bit later, so we're still doing that, and we're still saying, okay, if we can get you ranked in Google, obviously all just organic, then we can get people to do the thing that they want, which at the time really
Yeah.
was just to call you. You know what I mean? So I was working with, very blue collar local businesses.
Hmm.
I'm from Greenville, South Carolina, back in there now, but it was literally going to friends and family and any business that I could walk into and just try to explain that I knew what I was doing. I had zero sales skills. I had zero idea of what a package was or how to do this. And I think that that hustle taught me, it probably took me longer than it should have to learn some of the sales pieces that a lot of people need to have.
Right.
But I mean, it was rough. It was feast or famine for years, right? Of really not understanding how to put all of this together with,
Right. Right.
being able to pay my rent or, keep the lights on or,
Mm.
like all of that kind of stuff. And, for me, later on in my career, I was kind of, I get brought in on things that are like, oh my gosh, like we just got to get this to the finish. So many people can't get this finished.
Mhm.
Right. So I have a lot of grit as a human. And if
Right.
that might be bad or good. I'm not real sure. I think it depends on the situation. But I think that that's just really what kept me in it was at the time I needed that money and my why was huge. And I literally didn't have another avenue to try to do what I needed to do. And it just allowed me to every single day I'm not even gonna say 1% better. That whole thing, get 1%.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe 0.01%
You
every
just
day.
scrape it better as
Just
long as hey,
scraping
as long as
every
it's as
time.
long as there's a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. And that's so difficult to do when you're by yourself,
Mhm.
And how did you manage to stay motivated until you had that point where you're like, wow, you know what, this really is going to work? Because I know for a lot of entrepreneurs, they struggle with that motivation and being able to actually see the top of the hill where they're aiming at.
Mhm. So, one of my really close friends always said something that in the right moment can resonate very strongly. Then she says, it's amazing what you can do when you have no other choice.
Mm.
Right. And so, like, that's really where I was of really not having that and alluding to something that you said, like, anybody listening to this in the Facebook groups and the communities in your school community, right? Like all of this, like that didn't exist.
No, none of it. You just had
Literally
to
did
go.
not exist.
Like I can remember putting up posters with strips of paper on the bottom with my phone number on for people to call me so I could give them like quotes from my construction company and stuff. There was
Yeah.
no internet, and newspaper, local newspapers were where we got most of our leads back in the day,
Yep.
and
I
I
would
was
just
so
drive
lucky.
around to local businesses that were, near me, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
just
And just
introduce. Dude,
show my face.
it's so much easier now. Oh
Mhm.
my goodness.
It's
Like,
crazy easy
yeah,
now.
but here's the thing though, if you've got proper leads and you've got proper funnel set up and you've got proper sites and everything all built out, that still it doesn't replace going and knocking on doors and going to networking events and introducing
No.
yourself to other business owners and getting out there amongst where your clients are at, So
And I think that that truly is one of the separators. So,
mhm,
I teach other business owners in a group of agency owners too, and a lot of it is, guys, just because we want to be like this at our homes, behind these computer screens, they don't, right? They are traditional business owners. You have
mhm,
got to get out and meet them at some
yeah.
point. Like
Well,
it just is what it is.
that's one of the questions that I always ask is, once you know who your ideal target is, say, where are they?
Hmm.
Where do they exist? Where are they consuming media? Where are they relaxing? Where are they socializing? Where are they working? And like, it's not on the internet. It's not on
Right.
Facebook. Like, it's not. Yeah, you might catch them on Facebook at 6 o'clock in the morning, maybe if you're lucky.
Hmm.
But if you're trying to reach productive individuals, chances are they're out there being productive and not sitting on social media. And
Right.
I think that too many of the new guys think there's an easy button where you just run ads on
Oh, they
social and
absolutely
you
do.
know. Mm,
Absolutely, they think that that's a thing, and like that kind of gets in some of that strategic marketing initiative and why that doesn't work if the other pieces are not in place, right? And you mentioned understanding who ICP is, who your avatar is, who your target is, whatever your vocabulary on that. I'm gonna argue that 95% of business owners don't actually know.
Oh, I'd agree 100%. Like, yeah, absolutely. Because it's anybody that wants to buy what I'm selling,
Correct, and
and
that is
anybody that
fundamentally
needs
incorrect.
this. Oh, please, please, in your own words, talk us through why.
Think okay, so the way that I think about it is categorically different in when we market something through an ICP or a core message. It is a little bit different if it's a blue collar local company,
Hmm.
right? Versus, say, a white collar, even an agency would fall into that
Right.
category, right? Or SaaS companies we work with a lot, or, whatever, fractional companies, all are going to fall in white label. Let's talk about blue collar. Because they make up the majority of what's actually happening, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
imagine you're a plumber. Okay. The plumber's ICP normally is anybody that's got a plumbing issue,
Hmm.
right? That's actually not true. So we'll hold that. Let's just agree for a second that that is true. And then we think about the messaging for that same company. That messaging says, "We've been around 60 years, we're the best." And my response to that is, "No one cares." Right? Like that's not it.
Hmm.
The say I have a plumbing issue, okay? The messaging that's going to work for me is that you are going to be here within an hour and be done as fast as possible and get out of my house, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Your messaging around that, absolutely. Then you start really working to who that ICP is,
Mhm.
right? When we cast too large of a net through that ICP and that messaging, it doesn't land with anyone, is the
Right.
problem,
Yeah.
right? So when the owner goes, "Hey, I just want to reach anybody," well, of course you do. I'm not even mad that you want to make money or that you want to make money from everybody. That's not the issue, right? The issue is you're not going to make it because no one cares.
Oh, God, so well said. Yeah. I mean, I think we get far too caught up in how much people actually care.
Yeah, no
Um,
one cares.
yeah, like it's so critical when you're trying to put something in front of somebody and interrupt what they're doing. Let's say because there's the interruption based marketing and there's the
Right.
search based marketing, right? So we're trying to interrupt what they're doing. You better interrupt them by solving the problem that they've got. Like, you better interrupt them
Right.
by putting some value in front of them.
Correct.
No, nobody cares
Or no
that
one cares.
you've been around for however many years. It's what can you do for them right now in this moment. Now I've got your attention. Just take a minute and pause. Imagine your business running the way it's supposed to. Your inbox is cleared, your social media posts are scheduled, leads are being called in real time, all while you're meeting for lunch with your newest client. You're free to focus on what actually matters, growing your company, closing deals, building your brand. A virtual assistant can transform how you work, and that is where I can help. If you are ready to see how a vetted, trained virtual assistant can take your business to the next level, go to sam.live and just click on that big green button. It really is that simple. All right, thanks for listening. Back to the show.
And I wish that that were not the case, right? If I could capitalize on the fact that I've done this for 17 years, but no one cares.
Mm-hmm.
They only
Yeah.
care about, is this going to help them? And how can I help them? Which we could say is not great or whatever, but it actually is irrelevant to whether it's good or bad. It just is. And so at that point, we have to meet them there.
Yeah.
Right. So like even if so let's move into more like white collar stuff or product businesses.
Okay.
Been in a Best Buy lately by
Oh,
chance?
God, not in a minute. No.
So you go through, I
Yeah.
was in there not too terribly long ago, unfortunately, but here we are. Of looking around, 80-90% of the stuff in there is absolute garbage,
Okay.
right? Like legitimate garbage. It's not Best Buy's fault. Best Buy doesn't care, right? What does
Mm.
Best Buy care about? Selling the product. So if Best
Yeah.
Buy is going to sell 10 million, $100 million of your product, right? What does Best Buy care about? That it meets the ICP and the messaging and it sells. They
Yeah.
don't care that it's the best,
Mm.
because
Uh,
sadly that doesn't work. And my father was a cabinet maker, my mom was a nurse. Like I raised by people that being the best was really what you wanted to be,
well,
right?
yeah.
And you
Yeah.
can be the best. I like to think that I'm very good at what I do, right? But it's not because I've been doing it for 17 years, right?
Right.
It's because I'm very clear on who that ICP is, and I know through the messaging that they know that I can help them, and I know that I can help them.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, it's so well said. I mean, you find people do things for 17 years, and some of them, like yourself, excel and they have a trajectory and a curve, and some of them, poor fellas, they just repeat the same year for 17 years in a row.
Mhm.
So yeah.
And so like I mentioned before, I consult with other business owners and agency owners as well. I know a chunk of them, right? And the thing about them is they are good, right? Like being very good at what they do is actually not what's causing them to not move forward, right? It's their inability to understand the marketing and sales of their business, which is the ICP and the messaging. If they can get that together, which is what I help them do, right?
Mhm.
Which you will get onto the triangulation method,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
understanding how that works, they're like, oh, it's like they can see for the first time,
Well,
right? Because
th-
the issue is not in fulfillment or delivery.
no,
The
but
issue,
you have to remember the natural path to entrepreneurship is through excelling at fulfillment.
absolutely.
It's through being so good at what you do. You've convinced yourself, and you've got that momentum behind you. You say, right, I'm going to step out and do this on my own.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's easy to see the problem. You've got fulfillment experts and great technical people trying to run sales and marketing with no clue, because all they do is work their way down a fulfillment list. And
Right.
so I can't blame those guys.
No.
You gotta
But
work with them, and it's the natural evolution of a passionate technician, you
mhm,
know.
right. And that I feel for them, right? I've felt all of that myself in different places over the years, and really sitting with myself being like, we are really good at what we do, so why is this not clicking?
Hmm.
Right? Like
Yeah.
why isn't this becoming a thing? So all of that was really happening when it's kind of what brought about really understanding that it was the ICP and the messaging, right? So in an agency, say you've got so that this happened 5 or 6 times before I realized what was happening. Is you've got say two businesses in a similar niche, right? Understanding that of course the strategy is coming from us, the managing of the ads is coming from us. So very similar positions, not
Right.
competing geographically,
Hmm.
right? One is going to thrive and one is not. And the one that is not is pointing fingers saying the leads are crap. And the one that is thriving is like, oh my God, like this is fantastic. Right. And so this happens so many times. I'm like, what? Right. Like, well, like what really is happening here?
Hmm.
And introspectively looking, right, at my strategy and what the team is doing and saying, is it us, right, or is it not? And we have to be, as marketers, willing to do that, because
Right, right.
sometimes it is true, right? But this kept happening, and then I realized that it's not coming from marketing. It's either coming from their lack of sales alignment process, which is a really big issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
That plagues kind of all businesses, and then indirectly affects the marketing company.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Yeah.
it's what I call that creative brand positioning issue, which is not pretty logos and fonts and things like that. Does that have a place? Yes, but that's not what creative brand positioning is. That's who I help, how I help them, what's the mechanism by which I do that, and how do I communicate to them about it, right?
Right.
If those things aren't in place, can you generate leads without that? Yes. Are you going to generate as many for as low as a cost? No. But say you are generating leads, okay, and then you can't close them, more than likely it's a sales alignment problem.
I would be willing to bet without looking at anything that company A that had the great results was getting in contact with their leads within the first 5 minutes, and company B had no system for contacting their leads. And by the time they did contact them, the window of opportunity to do business had closed because they came in looking for a solution. They weren't contacted, and they went and found a solution somewhere else.
Right. Or they
That's my
forgot
bet.
because it was interruption marketing, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
they're just like, and we're done here, right? There is
Hmm.
a window of
You
opportunity.
got about that much time.
Right. Now, when we talk about how does that ICP and how does that messaging affect organic and paid, whether that is intent-based search or interruption, doesn't really matter. If
Hmm.
that ICP and that messaging is super clear, you are going to drastically reduce your CPLs, which of course then reduces your
Yeah,
lead,
yeah,
which
yeah.
then by proxy increases that volume.
Hmm.
Right? It
Yeah,
just is going to happen. Now, there are 4 different stages to business, right? Pre-validation, validation, leverage, and scale. The
yeah.
problem is that people are trying to market their companies in like they see people in leverage and scale doing, when they haven't done the steps in pre-validation or validation. And so
Yeah.
they haven't gone through that organic bit, right? And by organic, I don't mean just blasting spray and play outbound, right? Like let's we can talk about it if we want, but let's just agree that that's not what we're talking about. And so if I can go out and write content,
Hmm.
right, about to completely direct it to my ICP and very, very clear messaging that talks to a problem that they have,
Hmm.
I should be getting inbounds. If
Yeah.
you aren't getting inbounds, do not spend your money on paid ads. Do not.
Correct. Yes. Oh my goodness. I should just quote you and stick stickers of quotes over you. I mean, because like the thing is we're trying to shortcut something,
Correct.
and we're trying to just throw money at a problem, and without analyzing again who we're talking to or what problem we're fixing for them. And it's so easy to just throw a few $100 at Facebook ads and
Right.
see if you can find something. But by
Throwing some
God,
money at it ain't going to solve
no,
any problems. A, you're
no.
going to be out money and the
Hmm.
time, right?
Hmm.
So it, I think there is a group that knows that they are skipping steps, but then I think that there is a group that actually doesn't understand that, which is not inherently bad. It just, we can't help what we don't know,
I
right?
think it's yeah, I think it's more far more ignorance than laziness. I think they
Agreed.
just don't they just haven't been through that chapter of school yet.
Right.
Is all. I mean, look at look at me and the amount of grey hair I've got. How many semesters of business school I've attended,
Hmm.
and like you and I, we take this stuff for granted, and yet there's new people coming into entrepreneurship every day that have never been exposed to it, and they fall for the same headlines that we fell for 20 years ago about magic buttons on the internet and money coming out with Facebook ads. And
Like
man,
make that online money, you know what I mean? Make that internet money. It's
mm,
not, it, did we have the bells and whistles, like we talked about earlier, that we have now? Absolutely not. But
no.
did we have the competition that we have today? Absolutely.
Yeah, no. Wow. Honestly, you just don't even think of that. It used to be just like an empty football pitch. You could do whatever you wanted. There was
It was the
nobody
Wild
competing.
West.
There
You
was
could
nobody
sell
competing
anything to
for
anybody.
traffic, and there was no cap on there was no cap on credit card processing accounts,
Right.
and like just boom, yeah. There was no what FTC getting involved and stuff. But it really was the Wild West, and
Mhm.
quite a few people lost a lot of money. So maybe the regulation's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, I'm here for the
You know,
regulation.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
One of
because
our biggest clients was back in the early days, was a company that had done Black Hat SEO and knew
hmm
it, for a
Right,
very
right.
long time, right? And their competitors went out overnight, right? In 2008, basically, that they all were doing Black Hat, they all knew it, whatever. But this company was like, we have employees and we want to keep them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we need to do this. And I'm like, well, we got to do it right. We got to build it from the ground up at this point. And the thing is that's still what we would have to do today. Those fundamentals don't change.
You know, you're opening up this whole can of memories I'd forgotten about. But no, you're right, because by about 2010, I would say 2011 at the latest, like so many people have just moved on from Black Hat.
Hmm.
Like, because it used to be where you could get away with it
Hmm.
and, run cloakers and do all kinds of stuff and stay one step ahead. But like, if you think that these social media platforms aren't paying the best engineers possible to stop you doing that Black Hat stuff.
Correct.
And honestly, by about 2010, 2011, we didn't really hear that term much anymore. And you might get, something a little bit gray. And I'm like, no, I'm not, I'm not going to step on that gray, man. I'm going to stay straight white, because, you don't want your accounts jeopardized. You don't want your
Right.
reputation jeopardized, your brand shut down, like you just said. But
And we don't
I
even really hear
completely,
it anymore.
no, I'd
No.
completely forgotten about that. I
Yeah.
used to go on Black Hat World forums and read all
Right.
about
The
stuff
whole thing.
back in 2007, 2006, all then just reading all about it. And
So, I mean, do you remember like you could put images, but then because of the way the internet was, guys, you're gonna have to bear with us. But you could put like the keyword on repeat behind the
hmm
image,
hmm
right? And then cover it up with an image so like
we
humans couldn't see it, but it was like the number of keywords on the page and it could rank, right?
we
We're
do it
talking
with
like
we
old
do it with
school Black Hat,
Photoshop. It was Photoshop and Dreamweaver we'd use and make
Dreamweaver.
layers of it. Like shit.
That's the memories. Dreamweaver, Lord.
I wouldn't even know where to begin now.
Right.
I've been straight like on the internet for
Yeah.
probably since 2009, 2010 was probably the last time I ran Cloak Traffic. I just there's only so many times you can tear it down and rebuild it and
Right.
avoid the bots that are looking for you, and
Right.
you know cascade different accounts to avoid bans. And I just nah, it's not worth the headache.
No,
Um,
it's not worth it anymore. I mean, I don't know if we ever talked about this, but my theory, bear
mm,
with me, my prediction, let's say, is in the next 3 to 5 years, websites are not going to exist, not in the way that they do today.
Not like today,
It's going to
no.
be a social and app-based world. Okay.
Mm,
But what is not ever going to happen? Google is not going to say, there are no websites. See ya. Right?
right.
Like that is just not it. So we have to, if you have not started the old school kind of SEO and you are a local business,
hmm
you have got to do that now. Now that leads me into a very interesting kind of thing that is the difference in that blue collar and that white collar that we'll talk about. But if you're a blue collar business and you are not doing Google My Business and local SEO,
Oh goodness.
you're missing out today, hands down. But B, you will be left behind.
They do. That's literally for every brick and mortar. That's the first thing we touch,
Hmm.
like for real. Because like there's so many times people are on Google or on Google Maps especially, and the reviews, and it just all like if you're not a part of that ecosystem, what's Google have? 80% of the search traffic.
Right.
You
And
know, like
they're overlaying the AI on it now. Like
hmm
if you're a blue collar local business, like, and you're not there, that's place one. Like,
hmm
regardless of anything else, that's place one. Social obviously has its place in there. If you can do that, that's a different conversation. But it's changed, in my opinion, and that it gets us a little bit back to that ICP and that messaging and how white collar is different. All right.
right,
Imagine, I don't know, you've got some SaaS. Okay. Now, it's 2024. Chances are your idea is not revolutionary. Okay. That
right,
is extremely rare. All right. If it is, more power to you. But also don't convolute yourself and think that it is if it isn't. I'm
right.
gonna, put you there. But so if you're in pre-validation and validation, and this is a new business for you, SEO is not the place for you to be because you are competing against the ones that have been around for 5, 10, 15 years, and they have
Right.
way more money than you, right? Way more money than you. And so the idea that you could catch up to them SEO wise is laughable, even,
Right.
right?
Right.
So what we have to do is shift the target. And again, like we were talking about, we came from that,
hmm
right? But we have separated from it when we get into that white collar position because it's just not the place that you need to put your money, right?
Right.
Being able to say, okay, who is my ICP and what is my messaging? Really, really understand, who am I selling to? What is it that I'm selling? What is it called? How does it help them? Right?
Mhm.
More,
Yeah.
and the core of that is, what problem am I solving? I ask people this
Yes.
all the time. If I ask you what problem you're solving and you tell me the benefits, I'm going to keep
Mhm.
asking you until you tell me the problem, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it's so, like, I just like to peruse the internet and look. Maybe 1 to 2% of websites get this right. Sell me the problem, right?
Mhm.
Not sell me the solution.
Right. 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 Yeah. I just went through this with a site that we redesigned. Um, it's you've got to serve the client and solve the problem before you can ever sell them a product. You're selling them solutions to their problem that come from serving them. And like, I just think that why we weren't taught that in business school. Like you're taught that you bring a product to market and then you hammer the market with ads until they buy the product.
Right.
But
That's it.
realistically, it's almost the complete opposite of that. You talk to the market and ask what its problems are and where it's struggling and how you can help it.
Right.
Then you sell them a solution.
Right.
Yeah,
We
such a
have to solve a clear problem.
hmm
And talking about companies, even if we get investors involved, right? There's two different moments that it makes sense to be an investor,
hmm
right? Being able to say, okay, I have this product, I have this idea. This is the problem that I'm solved, that had, that is maybe ingrained in you, right? Like, something happened to you, and because of this problem, I'm trying to solve it. And
Right,
nobody else is solving this problem in this way, right? That's place one. Okay, very early on.
right,
Place two is, I'm actually in upper leverage early scale. I have the product or service. I have the clear ICP. I have the messaging, right? We are profitable. I need gas to keep my jet moving.
right.
That's place two. The problem is, most people come in the middle and they say, I can't get any investment. It's
Mhm.
not because they don't want to invest in you, it's because you're at the wrong place. But the core of that is to say, okay, what is keeping me from it? You can't go back in time, right?
Right, right.
But we can move forward. What's going to help you get to having the jet in the first place?
hmm
The ICP and the messaging.
Yeah, yeah. And really taking that to your investors and saying, here's who we're selling to, and here's the problem we solve for them.
Correct.
Like, and letting them see what it is that you do.
Hmm.
Man, I want to shift gears real quick, so we don't run out of time, and talk a little bit about the triangulation method that is proprietary to your coaching that you came up with, and tell me about how it works, and maybe guide us through one of those case studies from your website that you've implemented it through. That'd be great.
Absolutely. So I kind of gave you guys the story of, the two different companies,
Hmm
right? Meeting one can't convert the leads and are pointing their fingers at us, and the other one's like, oh, we love you, right? That was the birthplace of it. After that was happening a few times, I'm like, what's really happening here? Okay. So understanding that we're a marketing company, right? And saying, okay, well, people come to us because they want to make more money, right?
Right,
Like, that's what
right.
that's what they do. That's cool. That is a massive group of people, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
in all sorts of places, whether it's pre-validation, validation, leverage, or scale, wherever they happen to be, they come to us. We put their message in front of people to get people to then buy those things, right?
Right,
What
yeah.
I realize is there's two other pieces. The sales alignment process, which is huge, right? Not only the actual act of calling them, which is apparently harder than you would imagine for people to do, right? You're paying for leads and then they won't call them. Like, I don't understand that. That's a whole thing. But even the ones that do call them and still can't convert them well, right? We're looking at really, really low conversion rates.
hmm
It's because it's not clear. They don't know how to sell. Who am I selling to?
hmm
Right? How do I communicate to them the problem that I solve? And
Yes,
how did
yes.
I get them in the marketing? Was it clear who it is that this is for and what problem I'm solving? There's a
Yeah.
lot of synergy that has to happen there, right? And that creative brand positioning, which is the pinnacle, the top of that triangle, right? For the triangulation method, the ICP and the messaging. If
hmm
that is not clear, the others will fall apart. Now,
Yeah.
the argument is always, of course, I mean, you can scroll all day long on Facebook and see everybody that's, has ads without a clear ICP and without clear messaging.
Oh,
Are they making sales? Probably, right?
ninety
Is it
percent of
some
them,
of
ninety
them?
percent of them don't.
Right.
They just, yeah.
It's not what I'm saying, that the triangulation method it's not magic, right? But even if you are getting sales, it will improve it.
Oh yeah.
Right? If it's
Yeah.
organic, you're probably doing outbound and you're not getting responses. You're having low ballers or you're having tire kickers. That's because that's just in time marketing. I literally just did a post on that on my LinkedIn. Just in time marketing is for people who don't have money and don't have their network, right? I
Hmm.
get messages all of the time that are like, well, I could come in and you need a developer. Do you need this? And I'm like, I've been doing this for 17 years. Do you think that if I was short a developer, that I didn't have a whole list of people that had
Yeah.
already worked
Yeah.
for me for years? I'm not going to just be like, oh, this random person on on Facebook DMs. Yes, you. Like
Right.
that's not what outbound is, right?
Mhm.
But if you have clear ICP and you have clear messaging, you don't need it. That's the difference. You can attract your people to you. And people think that that is untrue, I think.
No.
Um,
Well, yeah, they think that, but no, it's not.
but it is
No,
not untrue.
not
Just
at
because it
all.
hasn't happened to you doesn't mean that it's not true, right? And
Right.
so being able, I actually recently did a post on this with screenshots of, changing ICP, changing messaging,
Hmm.
and clearly can see the analytics and booking a sales call or two every time I make a post,
Mm.
right? That's about being very, very clear on who it is that you're talking to and what problem you're solving.
Yeah,
That's what I do.
absolutely. Yeah, that's so well done. Like, I mean, it just like one of my favorite things to do is damn it. Do you know what? My mind has gone blank. We're talking about shifting entrepreneur. Oh, mindsets on sales calls. That's what I
Mhm.
was going to. You had said that I'm not going to edit that out. I'm fallible. Everybody can see me fall. It's fine. I'll get better.
My brain
Um,
does
yeah,
that. if
just,
y'all are gonna pretend that your brain doesn't do that, absolutely not.
so sales calls, like I had this limiting belief, this obstacle with making sales calls, calling leads, thinking like I'm upsetting them or I'm annoying them or I'm interrupting their day or whatever. And like now, what I like to do with my entrepreneurs is I do attraction-based marketing and I turn them into the authority in their space. And then the sales call isn't a sales call, it's a problem-solving call. It's a how can I help you? It's what do I have that can fix this thing for you? And so when you call this person, you're not calling them to sell them anything, you're calling them to make their day better. Like you're going to get rid of this problem for them and it's only going to be this much money. And wow, it all goes away.
This
Right.
whole idea of sales tactics and sales processes, and don't get me started on sales scripts, right? Like it's garbage. All
Right.
of it is garbage. All right. It's literally communication.
Hmm.
If you can't do sales, then you lack in communication. And I don't mean that at anybody that's listening to that. I'm giving you a place to start,
Yeah.
right? Like of really being able to like, oh, it's that. Okay.
Hmm.
Because you have your clear ICP, you have your clear messaging. When they come to you, right? So I've done both, right? Over 17 years, I'm sure you've had
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
fair share of all of the different things that we've tried to get clients, right? It's not, I'm not going to sit up here on my high horse, right? But the idea is when you're very clear on those things and that end person understands that you have what they need,
Hmm.
they get on the call and understand it's a sales call.
Right. Absolutely.
It is fundamentally different. It is a literal different world
Hmm.
than trying to get your leads only through the strategic marketing initiatives, right? If you live there, you need sales tactics because you're trying in some capacity to smoke and mirrors to a bit to say, okay,
Right.
this is what you need. It may not be because you are not clear on your ICP and messaging, right? And being able to communicate that. When I
Yeah.
step into businesses, and this is the core of what I do now, is really helping them with that ICP and that messaging.
Hmm.
It's not that they didn't have it. Of course, they have some idea of that,
Right.
but it isn't working, right? And so then we say, okay, we're going to change this. We're going to change this ICP. We're going to change this. And that is the cornerstone of everything else, the website, the sales collateral,
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
every email that's written, everything is
Hmm.
based around this core. It
That,
changes.
that I need to get that put on a t-shirt. Like people, it's so like, well, can you make me a new website? Well, yeah, I can. But first of all, you need to tell me like what's going on over here? Who's this guy we're talking to? What problems do we solve? And again, most people don't understand that.
I
They've
have no
never
idea.
put the time in to doing the research and even just polling their audience and talking to their existing customers and going, you know what? Those are the guys I made the most money on, and those are the guys I like the most. And why don't I target something like that? And they've never even looked at the data,
Mm-mm.
which,
They don't understand that that exists in that way.
but I understand it at 44, but I didn't understand it at 24.
Same.
Like, you know, so I hope people hear and go and look for themselves and go and do that research and
Mhm.
look into their markets, man. I hope people get the message and hit, especially like you've dropped so much knowledge in the last, 15 minutes. Well, I'm having fun chatting with you.
Welcome to Intermission.
So I don't run commercials on the show, but if I did, I'd remind you about our free community on School, the Clinic, a place where you can learn from me, the small business surgeon, and get direction, support, and accountability from others in the group. To create your free account, go to follow sam.live and click Join the Clinic. All right, thanks for that. Back to the show.
Thank you. Come again.
So to prove we're not fallible, tell me about a time when it went wrong and what.
Oh, it goes wrong, guys. It goes wrong.
Yes.
We'll go back to some
Yes.
early days because, like I said, I consult some business owners and agency clients, and I think that they do forget that I was there,
Mhm.
right? There was a local bed and breakfast here, and God, this was a long time ago, maybe 2008, 9, something
That's
like that.
that's past the statute of limitations. It's
Yeah,
okay.
right.
Yeah.
So it's been a minute, and I was struggling, like couldn't pay my bills, right? Like, I mean, it was bad. Um, they reached out and I'm like, oh my God, cool. Sold them a website. I want to say it was like $3,500 or something like that, which back
Right.
then was not terrible for a website,
That
right?
was pretty good money for a website in
For a
2007, 8.
freelancer,
Yeah,
yeah,
for
not
yeah.
bad. And I just couldn't pull it together. I couldn't get them what they wanted. They were not happy. They, like this whole thing. They were gracious enough at the time to just be like, you know what, this isn't working. We're gonna go in a different direction. Like they were as kind and gracious as you could be about it, right?
Mhm.
Couldn't get it through. Like it just plagued me, right? Like I couldn't design it in the way that they wanted. I couldn't figure out how to put it together. Like it just was bad. The whole thing, it
Yeah,
just
yeah,
was
yeah,
bad.
yeah.
But years after that, I started making more money and I was okay, right? And I mailed them the check back. I'm talking the guys like this was like 6 or 7 years later. Mailed them the check back with a note that said basically that thank you for being gracious in that moment. I'm so sorry that I could not do that at the time. I needed the money, you know what I mean? But here it is. And I sent them a check. They did cash it and they sent a very kind note back. So it's not, but that was, that was a long time. I mean, six
Yeah.
or 7 years for something, you know what I mean? But it's not that things don't go wrong ever, right? It's about how do we communicate that?
Oh
How do
goodness,
we,
yeah.
and literally, and this goes back to the communication thing for everything we do as entrepreneurs is about communication.
Yeah. Oh,
How is it
absolutely.
that we can get people to do what we want in sales? How is it that we can, get our team moving in the right direction and leadership? All of that is communication, right? But being able to own when you couldn't do the thing. Um, there there were some rough times of different things, but that one still sticks out to me
Yeah.
as being like, wow, I'm glad I'm not there anymore.
But such an important lesson though. And you nailed it with communication being the key. Um, like when people work for me, I try to tell them like when you make a mistake, come to me and say, I've made a mistake.
Yeah.
Can we fix it? Because
Mhm.
that's so much easier than you saying nothing and the client finding the mistake.
You never
Right?
want that to happen,
No,
guys.
no, 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 no,
Never
no.
want that to happen.
Make all the mistakes you want before you send
Right.
it to the client. That's fine. Just bring
You
it to
got
me.
to
We'll
stand
work
up
through
for
it. Right. But like it cannot go out to the client
them.
like that. And then when it inevitably does, because it always happens, something always slips, you're always going too fast, or you
Mhm.
got the money's upside down, or something's wrong and it goes to the client. for the love of God, don't avoid the client. Like,
No,
tell them
own it.
what's going on. Tell them if you're having cash flow issues. Tell them if you're having contract or subcontract, whatever it is, because most clients have already failed at a business or two.
Right.
They've already been where you're at, and so
We're
they
also
will offer
human.
grace. Yeah,
Like, it's
yeah.
perfectly fine to be human. It's
Hmm.
not perfectly fine to be an asshole, right?
Correct.
Like,
Yeah.
and I've had to go to clients, even ones that we have now, like things happen, be like, look, we are not going to meet that deadline. This is what's happening. I am so sorry. You know what I mean? Like this, the thing, guys, about the communication is you have to own it, but you have to tell them the plan, right?
Yeah,
Hey, I
yeah.
know that this happened, and I'm
Here's where we
sorry that
go.
that happened.
Okay.
What I'm going to do about that is X, Y,
Yes.
Z, right?
Yes.
I used
Yes.
to actually be the practice manager of surgery at a small animal ER and specialty center in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. And
Okay.
there were like 50 techs under me and like 8 doctors, right? My standing rule was you can come to me with a problem, my open door policy, but you
Hmm.
cannot come to me with it if you don't have a solution. I do not have to use your solution, but you
Right.
can't come to me with a problem unless you've got one.
Yeah, show me some proof you've thought your way through it
Correct.
at least. And
Correct.
another thing we should cover while we're talking while we're talking to folks is we always know when you're lying.
Always.
Yes.
Mhm.
We can tell when you're lying. Just tell us the truth.
Yeah.
Because
There's no point. Like, why
no.
would you? There's no negative that's going to happen from oversight, even, right? Like,
Hmm.
oversight as a pattern is a problem, but oversight in an issue isn't,
Right,
right?
right.
If you own it. But if you lie about it, you are a degrading the whole relationship. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? For your inability to say, I made a mistake.
I don't think that we fully understand the damage we can do by trying to avoid that kind of thing and just fibbing and covering stuff up. And I think that's a mistake a lot of us make in our 20s. I know I've made it before and stuff, but my goodness, it's so much easier when you just tell the truth and you sit down as 2 people or 3 people and you work together on a solution to a problem. I think if you can do that as an entrepreneur, because it's not a matter of if it's going to go wrong or not, it's a matter of when it goes wrong, what are
Right.
we going to do about it?
You do.
You know?
What's the
So
process?
yeah, yeah, dude, this has been awesome. I've got just a couple more questions for you, Kelly, before I gotta let you go. But I've loved hanging out.
Absolutely. No, this is
So,
great.
man, I am a huge proponent of continuing education and being a constant scholar of things. So tell me, what's a couple of good books that you've read in the not too distant past that you would recommend for business owners on the come up?
Profit first
Mm.
is just a core. And it's one of those things that you're going to read and be like, I don't need that. Yes, you do. So let me just get ahead of that and just be
100%. Yes, yes. Do profit
like,
first. Do it. Yes.
if you, and like I said, the 4 stage, so you can read Profit First at whatever stage of business you're at,
Hmm.
right? There's a book called Traction, which I really like, but only makes sense if you're in that leverage and above. It's not going to make sense if you're just starting, right? So that is, I have a team. I've been in business for a couple, 3, 4 years, maybe. Like that's going to make a lot of sense about that time.
Yeah.
And it's also
Yeah.
one of those things where you're like, I don't need to do these things. Yes, you do. So
Mm.
it's you're going to read it. This is from experience, and you're going to maybe put 1 or 2 things in place and be like, oh, that was fantastic, right? And
Right.
then about 3 or 4 years later, you're going to go back and read it and you'll be like, okay,
Hmm.
now I get this, right?
Yeah,
Of,
it does. Yeah.
of
Yeah.
really being able to put in those pieces. Those are very actionable books. The third, I really love the book Boundaries for Leaders. And
I've
I
not
don't
heard of that.
typically love self-help kind of books. Like I can
Uh-huh.
be kind of funny about that. But it's very good. And Dr. Henry Cloud, I think, is who wrote that.
Give me that
It's
name of it one more time, please, Kyle. I'll write that down.
it's called Boundaries for Leaders.
All right, look that up.
It's good. And that and that's the thing, guys. Like it's the communication, right? Like really understanding how to communicate through the team, right? Like what is your boundary? What is their boundaries? What is the client boundary? Like what is that? If we don't define them, then they don't exist and then it becomes really messy.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
don't want it to become messy.
I I love where you've gone today, like because so much of entrepreneurship is about communication.
Mhm.
I think if you could combine psychology and communication, you could know more about business than most people with business degrees. You know, it's
Absolutely.
huge. It's
Yeah, the
huge.
business and that kind of that communication is really why I hone in on that ICP and that messaging, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that you can like fix your way out of almost. You know what I mean? And like
Yeah. Yeah.
business degrees and things like that are very black and white, right? We do this, we don't do that. But there is that psychology, that creativity that comes with that ICP and that messaging that lives rooted in psychology and communication.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. All right, just a couple more questions for you. I ask this one to every guest, and it's a bit of a cliche, but I've done it for the last 3 years, and I love doing it. So, Kelly, if you could get in a little time machine and zip back 20 years to brand new and inexperienced, wet behind the ears, Kelly, that was all gung ho about building her business, what's a great piece of advice you'd turn around and give to yourself?
It's a good one. I would have put a lot more effort in understanding communication and sales and
Yeah.
not utilizing it as a train to get where I'm going. That's not what it does, right? To me, if I had really understood their importance and put active time into learning that craft, I'd be a lot farther along than where I am now.
Good advice. Good advice. Kelly, for those folks that have enjoyed listening to you today, where can they find you on the internet and on your socials and learn a little bit more about you?
Absolutely. So LinkedIn is where I'm hanging out most of the time these days. I'm sure we can drop the link in the show notes, and
Absolutely. Yeah.
my website is dappercodes.com, and I'm sure we can drop that link as well.
Awesome. I will put both of those links in the show notes for you, Kelly. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope to keep up with you in the future and chat a
Oh,
little bit more.
absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming on, Kelly. I really appreciate you. All right, guys, that was awesome. I'm so pleased that we got to talk. That was Kelly Gordon, the founder of dappercodes.com. And like me, if you have loved hanging out with her for the last hour, please run over, check out the link to her LinkedIn and to her website. All right, that is going to do it from us for today. You'll be good, and I will be back this week on Friday with another Friday Fire for your weekend listening pleasure. All right, that's going to do it. I'll see ya.